Senator Beam.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Minister, for joining us today. My question relates to the 2019 budget, and particularly the relationship between running deficits and the decreasing debt-to-GDP ratio. I think, as we all know, national debt is just one of many factors used in determining a country's economic health, and another is the debt-to-GDP ratio, and ours appears to be on a general trend to decline. Economists agree that a government that invests directly in its society and public infrastructure can lead to job creation, higher standards of living, and boosting economic growth. And there are a few governments, including in the G7 and one that I lived in, or a country that I lived in for a while in Germany, where there is a constitutional debt break, and where economists and others are now pushing to alleviate that so as to deal with a crumbling infrastructure, a near zero interest rate, and an economy that appears to be cooling. So my question is related to the decline in commodity prices, with the turbulence in the global trading system. What is your prognostication as you look ahead? What are the factors you are looking at as you try to determine the path of the Canadian economy?
Minister Morneau.
Well, that's the hardest question yet. So I guess in a sense, Senator, what you're asking for is a forecast. Maybe I can start by saying that really the best I can do in terms of a top-line forecast is to go back to what we did in our budget, which is to get a consensus view among private sector economists. But of course, that isn't the whole picture. The consensus view of private sector economists is that we will continue to grow, that we will find ourselves in relatively good company in terms of G7 growth patterns, because an expectation that we will be growing, at or near the top of the G7 countries, which is positive. But I do think that it's incumbent on us to think about how we can ensure that that continues to be the case. And from our standpoint, what does that mean? It means we need to continue to make investments that will enable us to be successful and grow. We've been very clear that investing in Canadian success is important. We focused on how we can ensure that families are doing well, middle-class families in particular. Canada Child Benefit being a really important measure that helped the overwhelming majority of families. That money going back into the economy was positive, helped us with the growth that we saw in 2017. We also need to be thinking, though, about long-term, laying down the path for long-term success. And infrastructure growth, as you point out, is critically important. In this year just passed, we made significant investments in infrastructure. When you look at both the investments that were shown, plus the amount that we put into the municipal infrastructure top-up, around $15 billion in infrastructure investments during the course of the 2018-2019 calendar year. So significant investments that will have a long-term impact on our ability to grow. In our budget in 2019, we thought also about how we take from those infrastructure investments and think about how we can deal with sort of long-term challenges that we're going to face. So we thought about the infrastructure around high-speed internet as an example, and put together a plan where we can get all Canadians to have high-speed internet between now and 2030. We thought about how we can ensure that Canadians continue to be successfully able to deal with a fast-changing economy. So long-term training approaches so that people can train themselves up to have the skills required for a changing economy. These are the things that we think are the backbone of what will be a growing economy. Infrastructure, the kind of thing people need for the digital economy and the way they build their skills for today and tomorrow. We think you put those things together and we have a continuing ability to be successful for the long term. And we also are resilient enough to deal with what might be any eventual challenges around the corner because of that low debt to GDP that you mentioned. I mean, we are the country among the G7 countries with the lowest amount of debt to GDP. We do continue to lower that amount of debt as a function of our economy and deficit as a function of our economy each and every year. That makes us resilient in the face of challenges while we continue to invest in the things that we think matter.
Senator Monsieur.
Senator Morneau. Welcome, Minister. My question has to do with the deduction for small businesses. The 2019 Budget Implementation Act proposes to eliminate the requirement that sales be to an agriculture or fishing cooperative in order to be excluded from the company's revenues. Since the proposed tax relief is limited, several of the small businesses that are members of cooperatives, for example, the forestry sector, feel penalized because they must share the deduction with the other members of the cooperative. Furthermore, this is a deterrent that makes it far less attractive to be a member of a cooperative, which has well proved its worth both in urban and rural settings. My question, Minister, aims to understand why all small businesses that are members of a cooperative are not benefiting from the same exemption, since they have the same structure and meet the same criteria as private companies under Canadian control. Mr. Minister of Finance, thank you for the question. We tried in the Budget 2019 to ensure that companies that are members of cooperatives are in a good position, in a similar position as companies that are not, businesses that are not cooperative members. I believe we have added an approach that will help companies that find themselves in situations such as those that are members of cooperatives to thrive, and those who are structured in that manner. But if there's something we should consider, and if you believe you have an idea that we should consider, I am open to considering it. Thank you.